Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1, or should I say, Stop and Go F1 Academy, because here we are for our very first F1 Academy video, looking at all the goings on from the debut weekend here for this season in Saudi Arabia, which is still a weird place to start a female-only racing series. But let's get into it. So, we had the qualifying on the Thursday. I spoke about it a little bit in the F1 preview video, but I'm not a huge fan of this qualifying format where you have one race determined by the qualifying, then your second race is determined by everyone's second fastest times, especially when on the broadcast you have no idea what the second fastest times are, so you leave qualifying not knowing what the grid's going to be like for another race. And also, the grids, I didn't check, but were basically the same. I think the front row was the same as well, so not a huge fan of that. I think they should probably just use the F2, F3 method where you reverse the top 10. But let's get into it. Firstly, with their first race, which had Doriane on pole, with Abby pulling alongside. There was an extra formation lap for some reason. Something that kind of let down F1 Academy was the fans. Lack of fans. A lot of empty grandstands here today, which, we see as well in Formula 2 and Formula 3. I mean, especially in Monaco. Remember Monaco last year? Yes, empty stands everywhere for the Formula 3 and Formula 2. And that's because, the areas that they go to, like in Saudi Arabia, aren't hardcore motorsport fans who are going to watch every single session. They're coming to see the Formula 1. So I think opening the day with Formula 1 Academy probably isn't the way to go to get that kind of audience in. If you'd had, say for this race, your F1 FP3, then immediately after F1 Academy, then you might have a few more fans there because they'll just go, oh, well, there's something else on now, so let's watch that. So, it's not a great look, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The race starts, and Doriane gets away really well, and then we don't see her ever again. Bianca Bustamante had an interesting one. She thought she had a pit stop and goes on the radio to say she has a pit stop, but she then doesn't come into the pits, but then really does struggle with the car throughout the remainder of the race. I think it's turn 4. She basically cut it every single lap. She's told to come into pits, but doesn't. And she was under massive pressure from Chloe Chambers in the Haas liveried car. Tina Houseman gets up to P9 in lap 3. Bianca Bustamante still not pitting. You have Jafal. There's some names I'm not going to be able to pronounce here, and I'm really sorry. But I have written them down how I think they should be pronounced. So if I still do it wrong, that's on me. Jafali, who was the wild card driver, has quite a bad spin and collects Alcobacy on lap 3, but both were able to continue. This brings out the safety car, and Alcobacy has the front wing of her car trapped underneath her car, which is not great. The safety car ends and she's still in the pits. Doriane, fantastic getaway from the safety car here. Hamda Al-Kazabi is up to P12 by lap 5. Now, here's my highlight of F1 Academy over these 2 days was Jess Edgar's double overtake on Tina Houseman and Leah Block. Fantastic double overtake, but as she comes back in, she clips her rear right tyre and gets a puncture. So it was a fantastic move, but just a little bit off, but overall fantastic stuff. Unfortunate about the puncture though, and that was on lap 7. Hamda Al-Kabazi has been trying to get past Nobles for lap after lap after lap, finally does get past her, but also goes off the track and gains an advantage, so has to give it back. That was a great battle that went on for a lot of the race there, and it was also great defensive driving from Nobles as well. Leah Block has a spin on lap 11 of 12 from P8. She took too much curb going through there, spun and hit the wall. Really disappointing for her there. I have been very much impressed by her though. I think this is her first single-seater racing, first open-wheel racing, but she's up there. She's not challenging for the lead or anything, but in points positions, had a good qualifying. In the second race, everything in the world went against her, but she still carried on and drove really well. So I think she's one to watch as the season goes through, because she'll just get better and better and better. I think she could be fantastic in the future. Love and Foss hits the back of Marty and sends them both into a spin. That's on lap 12. In the end, though, it was Doriane Pan who won the race. Avi Pulling in P2 ends up just 0.8 seconds off the back of Pan in this race, but that could just be because Pan was running by so much she kind of just took her foot off the gas a little bit. No DRS in these cars, which could have been interesting, because in both races there's a lot of cars very close to each other. If you give them that little boost, maybe we see a bit more overtaking, but the cars themselves are very simplistic in terms of aero and in terms of technology, so maybe they don't want to do that. I'm not too sure. And Maya Vung is in third, the Ferrari Academy driver. I'm sorry if I pronounce her name wrong, but it's just every time that they said it on the broadcast, her surname would not form as a word into my head, so I think it's Vung, but I might be wrong. On to race 2, and once again we have Doriane Pan on pole position with Abby Pulling alongside. Pan once again gets away quite well. Got Chloe Chambers going around the outside of Love and Foss, absolutely fantastic. Tina Houseman is sandwiched by Bustamante and Nobles. This is the battle for P8, but no one hits each other really well. Good driving through there. Love and Fossey is hit by Chambers, does a spin, sits on turn 1, and then before all the cars have passed her, starts moving again, and Leah Block drives right into the side of her. I have to say it, really, really bad, dangerous driving from Love and Foss there, to not wait until all the cars had gone. I know this is a hard place to be sat because you can't see, but that should be between her and her engineer to say, don't go yet, now you can go, because that was really dangerous, and she has got a 5-place grid penalty for the next race. This brought out a safety car. Tina Houseman was in the pits. They removed her engine cover and retired her from the race. Leah Block got a new front wing after the incident with Love and Foss. Pulling nearly overtakes Doriane Pan for the lead of the race off the restart. I think for a brief millisecond, Doriane Pan was not in the lead of the race, but she got it back. Love and Foss retires the car. There's a 5-second penalty for a false start, and I didn't write it down who that was for. That's really clever of me. Well done. I think it was Leah Block. Schneider spins. I've written down Schneider. Who knows if her name's Schneider? The one who drives for Sauber. She spins, and this brings out a safety car because Jafali tries to go round the outside of her to avoid her, but then hits the wall. So the wild card not doing too well here in this race. DNFing from both of them. And then a miracle happens because Tina Houseman is back in the race, everybody. Fantastic stuff. We get a load of penalties now, though. 5-second penalty for Leah Block for speeding in the pit lane. 5-second penalties for Chambers for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Tina Houseman is just a lap down now, going around trying to catch the back of the safety car queue. She does catch the back of the safety car queue, but is not allowed to unlap herself. I imagine because there wasn't many laps left, or these cars aren't necessarily the fastest, so for her to let go and try and unlap herself, by the time she got round, we might be nearing the end of the race. So that's the choice they decided to make then. We have some really interesting team radio whilst the safety car is happening. Firstly, Abby Pulling says that she can definitely beat Pan and she's definitely faster than her. She just needs an opportunity. She's had 2 races and she hasn't done it thus far. Doriane Pan is told on the safety car restart, let's try and play a different game. Then a few minutes later, her engineer comes back on the radio and goes, they've just broadcasted my radio message. Ignore it. Do what you want. Which is one of my favourite radio messages I've ever heard. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. The safety car comes in, we have the restart, and Pan is able to keep the lead again. There's an instant further back with Amna Al-Kabasi basically climbing onto the back of the car of Nobles, and the rear wing of her car flies across the screen at one point. She's out of the race. Then we come to the checkered flag. We see Doriane Pan do the double, winning winning here in Saudi Arabia, both races. Avi Pulling in P2 and Maya Vung P3, so identical podiums in both races. I think these are the three best drivers on the grid, but I also think the qualifying format basically does lead to repetitive racing and repetitive podiums, and that's what we've seen here. One of the most interesting things of the race happened after the race, because Doriane Pan, despite winning, didn't know the race was over and just kept on going full throttle, took the checkered flag twice, and then a red flag had to be flown for her to know that the race was over. The Prima team were all celebrating in the pit lane that the race was over and that they'd won, and then they had to come on the radio and go, Doriane, it's over, the race is over, go home, stop, and she just hadn't been told. She is under investigation for taking the checkered flag twice, which is a investigation warning I don't think I've ever seen before. I saw Will Buxton put on Twitter that the normal punishment for that is a penalty and you might lose the win, which I hope doesn't happen because she fully deserved to have the win here, but it's a very, very strange thing to happen. I guess I should give out the hero of Formula One Academy, which, this is an award I give out for F2, F3 and now F1 Academy. It's not necessarily who was the best driver, but who entertained me the most. But sometimes I do give it to the best. I'm going to give it to the best today because the winner should be Doriane Pan, because she was fantastic. So there you go. That's what I've done. There you go. That is F1 Academy. I think the next race is in Miami, which should be an interesting one to see. I think so far, so good. Like I said in the preview, the cars are a lot slower than F2, F3, which is to be expected, and I think much like we see with F3 drivers, I think these drivers will learn and advance quite rapidly throughout the season and just get better and better. I do think Doriane Pan is like a league above anyone else. Avi Pulling is close, but I think if Doriane Pan doesn't win every single race this year, I would be quite surprised because I think she's just that much better than everyone else in this championship. So there you go. That is my review for F1 Academy here this weekend. I'll be back in a little bit to talk all things F2, then later on today for the big one, the F1 Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia. I will see you all then. Until then, though, have a good one. Goodbye.